Aloha everyone, and thanks for joining me for my second video. If you had a chance to watch my first video, I showed you a little strategy on how to peel and devein shrimp. Well, in this video, I hope to show you a little recipe that I grew up having and learning from my mom and dad back in southern Georgia, and it's a stewed shrimp dish that you can use with the shrimp that you've already peeled and deveined. So I hope you like the recipe. Let's go ahead and get started. Okay, we're going to need about 2 to 3 tablespoons of vegetable or olive oil. I used olive oil. You're also going to need 1 medium to large onion, sliced and cut. About 1 to 2 tablespoons of flour. The more flour, the thicker the gravy. And you can use water, but I use chicken broth. You can also use a vegetable broth as well. I use salt and pepper for my seasoning. And I used about 25 raw shrimp shelled and deveined. You'll want to start heating your oil until the oil starts to shimmer. You don't want to heat it too high. If it starts to smoke, it's too hot. Now that your oil is hot, you'll want to add your onions. Be careful when you're adding the onions because the oil could splatter and cause injury. Once the onions are in the pot, just take a spatula and start tossing the onions around very gently. You want to make sure that the onions are separated and that they're coated evenly with the oil. One thing you'll want to remember is that the onions can burn very quickly, so don't leave the onions unattended and just toss until you get the consistency you're looking for. Now, as you can see, our onions have been cooking for a little while. They've reached the desired translucency and consistency that we've been looking for. Again, you want to continue to toss the onions in the pot very gently, very swiftly, so that they don't stick or burn in the pan. Now that the onions have cooked down to the desired consistency we want, you can now begin adding your flour. You'll want to add the flour sparingly at first and just add a little at a time as you go. The more flour you add, the thicker your gravy will be. Also, you want to brown your flour until it starts to get a good golden brown. This will determine the color of the gravy that you'll have. The darker the flour, the darker the gravy. Well, as you can see, our onions and flour have been cooking for a little while and they've taken on that golden brown color we're looking for. If you want your onions and gravy a little darker, just cook your onions and flour a little longer. But just be careful not to let them sit too long because they will burn very easily. Now you're ready to add the broth. You want to add about half the broth initially. Once you add half the broth, take your spatula and start to stir the onions around in the broth. This will allow the flour to be released from the onions and to mix with the broth. The gravy will start out thin, but as you bring your broth to a boil, you'll notice that the gravy will begin to thicken. So just take your time, stir the onions, release the flour, and add more broth as needed. Now that our onions, flour, and broth are all mixed well together, you'll want to bring that mixture to a boil. Once the boil starts, you'll want to add your salt and pepper to your liking. I only add a little bit because I use chicken broth. The chicken broth and vegetable broth are already seasoned, so you don't need a whole lot of extra seasoning beyond that. However, if you used water to make your gravy, you may need to add a little more seasonings to your liking to make sure that it's just right the way you want it. Once you add your seasoning, take your spatula and just mix those seasonings around. Make sure that it's mixed in well with the gravy. And as you're mixing your gravy, you want to take little taste tests in between. Once you do, be very careful because the gravy is very hot. Take a quick taste test. If it's the way you want it, then you're good to go. Now our gravy is boiling quite well. Now you're ready to start adding your shrimp. Now, just as we did when we added the onions earlier, you want to be very careful when you're dropping your shrimp in because the gravy can splatter and it could cause injury. So just take your time, add your shrimp from the bowl that you stored them in, and make sure that you place them evenly in the gravy. Once all the shrimp have been added, you'll notice that there may be just a little bit of liquid at the bottom of the bowl. Take that liquid, pour it right into the gravy. That's going to add extra flavor to the gravy at the end. Once you've added all your shrimp, just take your spatula and just stir those shrimp around very easily, very gently. Make sure that they're all even in the gravy and let the gravy continue to boil. Now that you've completed the recipe, you now have your southern stewed shrimp. I served mine over rice. In some restaurants, you'll even find stewed shrimp served over grits. I prefer rice. In any case, I hope you enjoy your dish.
Well, that's it. It's a pretty simple recipe, but it does take some practice to get used to the procedure of making the dish itself. Well, I hope you liked the video, and if you do, and you like the ones before, please subscribe to the channel and share the videos with your friends. Thanks a lot, and I'll be uploading other videos soon. Also, if you have comments or if you have suggestions for videos, please leave those in my comments section. I'll be glad to take a look at them and accommodate as much as I can. Thanks again for watching my channel. See you soon. Aloha.